And on that note, I want to welcome everybody to the world according to that man, America's humble servant, Benjamin Jeremy Stein. I want to welcome everybody that's in the chat, that will be in the chat. I want to thank everybody that's been downloading the episodes. I want to thank everybody for the great comments and the great ratings we've been getting on iTunes and pretty much all over, and the comments we get on YouTube. It's very kind and it's greatly appreciated. Remember, everybody get up-to-minute reports on the show, benstein.substack.com. We're joined tonight from managing editor of American Greatness, Ben Burgess Boychuk.
Pleasure as always, Jonah.
Did you?
Ben, everybody, good to see you.
Judah, you mean?
Judah, not Jonah.
Yeah, I didn't.
Jonah's swallowed by the whale.
Yeah, thanks.
How many times have I rebaptized you now? I think about 14 on this show.
Well, God bless you. We love you anyway.
Yes, you'll still be back. And of course, from 93.1 WIBC, the president of Conservative Talk Radio, bam, Bobby Kendall. Bam. Welcome.
Judah, it's a pleasure to be with you.
Ben, I make mistakes all the time. I have a whole bunch of nurses here because I hurt my knee so badly, and I call them all by different names all the time. And you know what? I make them very, very good, super good prime salmon fillet and prime steak, T-bone steak, or ribeye, and they're perfectly happy.
And that's a hint for you, Ben Boychuk. That's the way to get back.
It's possible I need more fish oil in my diet.
No, you have to send Judah.
Yes, but of course the show would be complete without America's humble servant, actor, writer, provocateur, saint, sinner, lover, father, grandfather, mathematician, statistician, mathematician, economist, but most importantly, Dr. Benjamin Jeremy Stein.
And you are catching me just as I am doing something that's never been done before. I am taking a snake that communicated to its keeper that it wanted to be changed into a leopard, and I have just finished that operation.
We're not, but tonight's doctorate, Ben Stein, tonight's doctorate is going to be more in the psychological department. And with that, I go to Ben Boychuk for the first story of the night.
So I think everybody on this program is familiar with the events of January 6th. President Biden. Well, it seems there was some untidiness at the Capitol building, something to do with the election. I don't know, but apparently it got a lot of people exercised. And so President Biden today had a few words to say about it. He said, quote, "It wasn't dissent, it was insurrection, it was riot and mayhem, it was radical and chaotic, it was unconstitutional, and maybe most important, it was fundamentally un-American." And that's what he said at the White House today to a gaggle of reporters.
So Ben Stein, he was either referring to his brain or his own party. But
well, I mean, let's call a spade a spade. It was an incredibly stupid thing that the demonstrators did, just unbelievably stupid. But unconstitutional? I don't think so. I think we have the right to dissent. As I've said many times, and we've all seen on TV, the Capitol Police were opening the doors and ushering people in. There was no mayhem. There was no destruction of priceless statuary and priceless paintings. There were people behaved very, very well. They just sort of lounged around like they were fraternity boys doing a prank or fraternity girls doing a prank, sorority girls doing a prank. There was never any danger they were going to seize the government. What is Biden talking about? It's scary.
Well, how about this?
Misunderstand so badly.
How about this, Ben Stein? How about this? I mean, there's been a lot of loose talk, certainly among people who have testified before the January 6th commission that Nancy Pelosi convened last week. And there's been a lot of loose talk among commentators in the media saying these things. The people who did that were traitors. The people who
how could they have been traitors?
Hold on, let me get to it because I think you'll like this. The people who did that were traitors. They were insurrectionists. They committed sedition. They are terrorists. Well, we have statutes on the federal law books for each and every one of those things, for terrorism, for insurrection, for sedition, for all of that stuff. Not a single person who has been arrested and jailed, sometimes for months, has been charged with
sometimes in solitary.
Many of them in solitary confinement. Not a single one has been charged with treason. Not a single one has been charged with insurrection. Not a single one has been charged with sedition. And yet,
so this is just terrorism by the government. That's what we're really afraid of.
It's
psychological warfare, by the way.
That's right.
And that's why I wanted to get into the psychology of this, Ben, because I don't just believe the long game for them right now. They're still scared to death of Trump. They're still scared to death of the Trump movement. And this is their way of thinking that they're putting their foot on the throat of the Trump supporter. And I wanted to get into the psychological from you and then to Rob, because we've discussed this. I was thinking today about Nixon, and it's amazing. But it's still amazing that they're making a movie today still about how evil he was, or a TV show about how evil he was 40 some odd years later. Like what is this? And Trump will be the same, Ben. And it's this. Please go for it.
Well, Hollywood is full of angry, confused, incredibly ignorant people. And I'm afraid that some of these people are hard at work on this movie. Probably not that hard at work, because if they were hard at work on it, they would realize that Nixon never did anything wrong or illegal. But let's back up to what Ben is talking about. It's very, very important. There is no crime there. There's no there. Treason is defined in the Constitution. Very specifically, aid and comfort to the enemy in time of war. There is no such thing as that going on now. Sedition would be trying to destroy or demolish the government, and there's none of that going on. There was sightseeing, and there was scary sightseeing to people who tend to be scared and to make capital out of being scared, like what's her name, that crazy woman, AOC. But in terms of this being a serious matter of revolution or insurrection, that's just a pure fantasy. And it's very scary that the government of the United States is now in the hands of people who run it on the basis of pure fantasy.
Rob Kendall.
Well, first I want to know, Ben has drank like 9 things in the first 5 minutes of the show.
Okay,
what
I
are
would like
all
to
of these
explain
things?
to you what they are. May I?
Yes, please.
All right. This is a special elixir that I get from Atlanta. It's called Diet Coke.
Or as we call it, woke Coke.
It's very hard to get. Very hard to get. This is Tazo Refresh Herbal Tea. It's from the Tazo company, and it's a delicious peppermint flavored tea. This is paregoric. This is a stomach medicine, which is primarily kaopectate. It has some other ingredients in it to soothe the intestines. And that's it. And that's all.
That was the preferred drug in 1757. But Rob,
right. you know who was addicted to this drug? Only he got it in pure form instead of this horribly diluted form that I have. The greatest essayist of all time, Samuel Johnson.
There you are. But Rob, let's get back to always great with the train of thought, Rob.
So so here's the everything you guys have laid out is perfectly correct. No one's been charged with any of these things because they didn't happen. I believe the only person who died that day was at the hands of the cops, not of the rioters or the.
And we still don't know why.
No, supposedly there's 5. We don't know. We only know 2. You're going to tell me what is it?
No. There's only one. Ashley Babbitt was.
Yeah, but they say 5. So
they can go cram it to the left. There was only one.
I agree.
But the issue is they have to keep this going, right? Because they have nothing to run on. They have a midterm they have to win, and they have nothing to run on. They've done nothing for the American people. They've continued mass inflation, illegal immigrants pouring across the border. They haven't finished COVID, which they promised to do. They've been a failure on absolutely everything. So the only option they have left is try to intimidate people into saying, well, we suck, but we're not Trump.
Well, no, what they can do is say, we are protecting you from a gang of revolutionists and terrorists. But it's so clearly not true. It's comical. But the sad thing is that so very many of my fellow Americans do not stay aware of developments to realize just how big a lie it is.
Brilliantly said.
I have a friend whose husband, who passed away not long ago, was my very best friend in the whole world. And she is an ultra leftist. And the other day, I called her just to give her my condolences, as I do quite frequently. And she just was shrieking at me about January 6th as if it were some day of mass executions. It's unbelievable, the lies that these people will tell, just unbelievable.
Ben Boychik, so you work for the fabulous paper American Greatness, and like Ben with Spectator.org, and you I'm just asking, I'll ask this to all of you. Can you recollect a time where conservatives or Republicans ever did? I mean, January 6th, my God, this was like, I mean, I'm being honest. Have we ever done anything like that in recent memory? Have had a protest?
Have we ever done anything at all dramatic at all, period?
I love the one time that we decide it's all of a sudden, Ben Boychik, it's an insurrection. We had an insurrection for a year and a half by populations of Americans, and we have a protest, and all of a sudden it's an insurrection.
Yeah, it's an amazing thing. In the riots in the American cities last summer, and I think in some other months on either end of the summer, large mobs of criminals, many of them, I'm sorry to say, African Americans, broke into stores, looted stores, set stores on fire, killed people. No hearings about that. Hardly anyone ever been punished about
hearings.
That.
They get bailed. They're donations.
Right,
Ben Boychik.
That's right. They get. Sorry, they get. That's right. Huge donations.
Ben Boychik.
Boychik. Yeah. So the answer to your question is no. We don't tend to do this sort of thing. Conservatives are not big on political street theater. The events of January 6th were, as Ben Stein said earlier, in some ways quite stupid, because if you're going to go, maybe you want to go all the way. If you're going to go,
we don't want to go. You don't even want to consider going all the way.
Well, but if you're going to go, then go. But if you're gonna half-ass it, then don't.
They weren't even half-assing, sir. I used to work in that Capitol. Maybe you did too. I know that Capitol building very well. I'm sure you do too. I used to have a very close woman friend, not a girlfriend. I'm happily married to an incredibly wonderful woman, but a woman friend who used to run around there exercising. And she would tell me all the time about how the Capitol Police were so friendly, they would let anybody in. And God bless them, we like friendly police.
Right.
The idea that these people were a tough police force overwhelmed by armed gangster demonstrators, that's just nonsense.
I would simply put it this way. For at least 30 years, I've heard leftists pine for revolution. And they don't have the nerve to do anything really, although they burned some cities to the ground and they'll kill people now and again. And we've got problems in Portland and Seattle and things like that. But by God, revolution is a right, by the way. We founded this country on revolution. You have a right to revolution. You just don't have a right to win.
And you don't have a right to violence. You don't have a right to set things on fire. You don't have a right to rob people. You don't have a right to beat people. Well, here's this. In New York City, a very, very great, wonderful city, there are gangs of African-American freedom fighters who walk around neighborhoods that are mixed with blacks and Jews and go up to elderly or even middle-aged Jews and punch them in the face and try to knock them out. And that's called the knockout game.
Yeah.
Are there hearings about that? No. It happens all the time. Are there hearings about that?
Clearly, Ben, that's clearly self-defense because those elderly Jews were looking at those black kids. we
were slave owners. But Rob, I want to go to for you as we're running out. But Rob, in a sense, January 6th was nothing more than people looking for an exciting free day pass into the Capitol. I mean, really, it was almost like they were sightseeing just very loudly.
Well, I guess I'll
continue.
It wasn't
almost like it. It was.
Well, I'll continue to ask the question. If a police officer tells you come on in, and you come on in, what crime have you committed? I mean, look, I know even in basic traffic control, the police officer doesn't tell you to come on in or proceed if they don't want you to proceed.
It's it's terrifying that people have been put in prison for this. It's just breathtakingly awful, terrible. Wifey and I every night, big wifey, the world's most wonderful person, and I watch Perry Mason, and Perry, we hope, could have gotten these people out of prison immediately. Maybe not. We're not in the same world. We're not dealing with Hamilton Berger anymore as the chief prosecutor. We're dealing with somebody much more like Goebbels as the chief prosecutor.
Well, here's the thing about that, by the way. A lot of these guys who are in that DC jail have got public defenders representing them, which I don't understand. I don't understand how in the hell it is that in this world of a great many legal
that you raise, I know where you're going, and it's a brilliant point and a brilliant question.
I'm not going to name anybody.
I don't know where he's
but
going.
I don't understand where the lawyers are.
And I want to say I knew you were going with that, and I asked Larry Klayman this question because as Larry Klayman being a friend of the show, and Larry Klayman being one of there's only so many, and I asked that question: why aren't there more? And because so many lawyers, as you saw, Ben Boychuk, when they went during, fighting for Trump in the court systems, their law firms were threatened.
Yes, you're correct about
that. Their families and children were threatened. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Ben Boychuk.
There are conservative legal foundations.
Yes.
There are legal foundations that have been established as 501c3s, nonprofit organizations that are able to raise money for just this stuff.
The biggest problem,
I don't know where they are.
The biggest problem, and I will say this, and this isn't because I love Larry Klayman, but Judicial Watch is a joke. Okay,
right.
They raise.
I'm not talking about Larry. I'm just talking.
No. I'm saying what I'm saying is an organization like Judicial Watch isn't run by a lawyer. But you ask a great question. Ben Stein, where are these lawyers? Where are the funds?
Well, wait a minute. Where are the judges? Where are the judges who say, wait, there's no cause of action here? There's such a thing in law as what's called a demurrer, which is to say DEMURRER, failure to state a claim for which relief can be granted. So where's the claim that these people are stating? Joe Schmeckel walked through an open door and walked around the Capitol, sat down, put his feet up on the desk, looked around and walked out. Where's the crime? And yet there should be judges who at the first mention of this are throwing out all the cases. They're not. Everybody's afraid. This is the terrifying thing about life in America today. So many people are afraid. There is just a climate of fear all over the country.
But it is a brilliant question, Ben. But I want to ask Rob a quick question. Rob, you obviously have a talk show that's on every day where you talk about the most controversial of issues. And everybody knows that conservative sites have a very hard time with advertising. Have you encountered any drop in advertisers? I know We Grow Hair Indie is a big advertiser, but have you seen? Is it hard? Have you had pushback?
Wait a minute. I have a question.
We got those advertisers too, Ben.
Wow, Judah, you're really. I don't know. It's with you.
Yes,
I get.
No, because one, our ratings are outstanding and they continue to go up. And our advertising base is extremely loyal. We are the station of record in the city of Indianapolis. Our ratings are great. We're a heritage radio station that's been around 80 plus years. So no, but I think in a lot of ways, it's also part of what we do, which is we make conservatism entertaining. We make people laugh. We make people have a good time. We have a bond with our audience just outside.
Very good.
Pitching with people about politics. We've had Ben Stein on our show. We've had Judah on our show. People love our guests.
And I would love to be back on your show.
Yeah, that makes two of us. If you're going to show the picture that I took in Target, risking my life to take a picture of a dog with a muzzle and a face mask and a guy in the Target cart, I should be on. I should get credit for that story. But on that note, if you just tuned in, you are listening to The World According to That Man, Benjamin Jeremy Stein. I want to thank everybody that's in the chat and remind you, even though you're in the chat, you can still download the episodes wherever streaming is downloadable. We beg of you, we ask you, and we thank you for already doing it. We are joined tonight from American Greatness, managing editor, Ben Burgess-Boychuk. I had to be explicit about it tonight because my last Burgess Meredith reference you did not get.
I just am a little bit slower now.
Yeah,
I know the feeling.
As I said to Rob before the show, he was started to get up and down, and he's the youngest, and he was making a few noises, and I said, the noises have started. Rob Kendall from 93.1 WIBC. The noises, bam. WeGrowIndieHair.com.
We need the Astros to score 3 runs. I'm not going to tell you why, but we need 3 runs from the Astros.
Okay, so I have a quick question. Other than Rob's betting habits, I have an interesting thought about all of this, and it goes to Rob's constant love of sports and my love of sports. I would imagine, Ben Stein, the majority of sports fans are conservatives. You could tell by the numbers, especially with the ratings. Being down drastically and dramatically the way they are, is Republicans enjoy sports and enjoy going to sporting events a little more. And one way of getting out your toxic manhood is by going to sporting events, you ever notice it's not the people after Super Bowls that start riots and looting and burning the city down that were at the game. It's people on the streets that didn't go to the game. And I really think something that's is just, Ben, it was just a quick thought. I could be totally out of my mind with that.
Well, first of all, I'm not a big sports expert. I don't know what the political feelings would be.
It is. It's
sporting events. But let's enlarge the picture somewhat. And just say there's a gigantic constitutional miscarriage of justice going on. Go back to January 6th. Something horrible is happening there. We are having very violent suppression of free speech and free expression and right to assemble. And it's getting worse and worse. And this is a very scary thing that have suppressed the basic rights in the Constitution. And nobody's doing much about it at all. And as you say, where are the conservative judges, conservative lawyers? There are plenty of conservative lawyers. When I go to dinners of the American Spectator, which are always great dinners, there are always lawyers there. Where are they? Why aren't they suing? Why aren't they involved in these cases? I mean, these don't even seem like difficult cases.
No, you raise a great point, and it goes to my next what I wanted to talk about next, Ben Boychuk, because we were talking through the day, and this next story was CNN firing 3 people that decided not to get vaccinated, and I asked you, where are the unions?
I don't think they have unions at CNN. I don't think they do. I know. I mean, there are not that many unions in Hollywood. There are unions for us writers. I'm a member of the Writers Guild of America West. There are unions for us actors. I'm a very, very, very happy member of Screen Actors Guild. There are unions for people who do acting on TV. That's American Federation of Television Radio Artists. They're great too. But in terms of guys who are just hanging around the sets, I guess they're gaffers unions, lighting people's unions, best boys unions, but I think on the news side, unions are pretty thin.
Ben, what do you get out of being in those unions that you named, the writers?
I will tell you a hell of a lot. A pension, P-E-N.
A pension for what?
Oh, dude.
Oh, my God.
Do you know how invested he is?
You're about to get schooled really badly.
Yeah. Please.
On private.
I'm fascinated by this. Please.
We a certain amount of our paycheck is taken as we're being paid and put into a fund, and that is true for writing and acting, TV and movies, and it is invested by, we hope, very smart, capable people. And then when we reach a certain age, which I believe I think it could have been 59 in my case, or 60, but I think I waited till the last possible age, which was say either 65 or 68 or something like that. We start getting a pension. Now, I would say before the pandemic, it was so I wouldn't have even noticed it. I would have lit my cigarettes with it. But since the pandemic, when the work in Hollywood is very, very sparse on the ground, I'm very happy to have those checks. Very, very happy.
But I want to get back to something because Ben, you raised it. I want to get back to this Capital Six thing. Ben, there's one reporter in America who is actually reporting on the story faithfully, Ben Boychuk, and that is Julie Kelly. She's getting all. Kelly. And so you ask, where are all the lawyers? The better question is, where are all the Julie Kellys?
Well, yeah, that's a very good question because she's really one of the few who in the United States who's doing any meaningful coverage. And Julie, who has been with us at American Greatness for several years now, has cultivated marvelous sources. She's talked to many of the people who have been in the DC jail. She talks to them at the jail. And she had a really terrific and very powerful and very moving interview that we published last week at American Greatness with Ashley Babbitt's mother. And Ashley Babbitt, of course, was the one and only person who died on January 6th, who was shot and killed by an as yet unnamed Capitol Police officer. But Julie has a story for us that's going to be published in about half an hour for Friday, in which she asked the question, why won't the government release body cam video? Because it turns out...
Oh my God, that's such a good question. There must be so much of that. Oh my gosh, that's such a good question.
There is, in fact, as we know for a fact, that there are more than 14,000 hours.
Oh my God.
Of surveillance video generally. So that was captured on security cameras.
Wow.
And other sources. But we also know now that there is body cam video on the part of certain Capitol Police officers. And some of that has been selectively released, but a lot of it, the feds have withheld, and the courts in making certain judgments about certain defendants have said, well, we don't have this evidence to consider one way or the other. So it's not really something that is judicially admissible or something that we have to take into account. And yet, as she begins this story that's going to be appearing very shortly, she refers to Judge Thomas Hogan at the DC District Court, who in deciding a sentence for a couple who decided to take a plea bargain for their participation in January 6th, referred to testimony before Congress last week at the January 6th Commission, which has not been subject to any sort of cross-examination. He simply took it for granted that what was stated under oath before Congress, and people lie before Congress all the time, was true.
It's this. I cannot tell you how vital it is. I've told you this every show virtually. You must right now go to your computer and buy 1984. It's so. This is exactly what's happening here. A total no due process, no meaningful defense. If you're accused by the Ministry of Justice or the Ministry of Truth, the Ministry of Love, you are guilty and you get punished. And I mean, when I say punished, I mean really punished. This has stopped being a democracy. It's still a great country to live in out here for me in Beverly Hills. It's absolutely fantastically great, unbelievably great. But for these people who are trying to exercise their free speech rights and who are invited in by the Capitol Police, they are being subjected to a kind of horrible Orwellian ordeal.
And I would also suggest in half an hour going to American Greatness, reading Julie Kelly's story and sharing it all around and donating a few shekels to both American Greatness and, of course, AmericanSpectator.org.
May I respectfully ask, Ben Boychuk, Ben?
Yes, sir.
I'm very, very illiterate when it comes to computers.
I will send you the story.
Okay, thank you.
But Rob Kendall asked a good question, and he asked you a good question about unions. So now, Ben, I wanted to get to this really quickly. because CNN, this whole idea, remember with the NFL, with players, with the kneeling, obviously everybody remembers that, and being told that they're allowed to kneel, that it's their right to kneel. So now take that in reverse. So people that don't want to get vaccinated, it's no longer their right. The company has every right to fire them. And I sometimes get confused, Ben Stein, between when people say it's a private company, quote, it's a private company, but it's publicly traded. And I get very confused. My point being is if you're a publicly traded company, you should have somewhat of a responsibility.
You don't. You do have responsibility to your stockholders, but you have no responsibilities under the Constitution. You do not have you do not have to give your employees the right of free speech, right of due process, or any of those things. You do have that right once you go to trial, and that is incredibly important. And where is it? Where the hell is it? We're not seeing it at all. It really is very, very upsetting to see the rights of Americans under the Constitution just tossed away lightly. It's not a joke. It's really serious.
I have a question, questions
please.
for the entire group. I thought under HIPAA, you couldn't. There were all these things.
I thought the same thing. Go for it, though.
So someone needs to help me, because years and years and years I heard HIPAA this, HIPAA that, blah 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 blah. But now apparently you can not only ask, you can mandate. So what is this HIPAA I've heard for all these years? Can you ask someone if they've had the shot? Can you make your employees tell you? Can you make them get it? Where are we on the legal aspect of this?
I don't know even what you're
talking. And this is why I don't like food on the show.
All right, I'm not going to eat any more food.
So so the answer to your question, Rob Kendall, is that that depends almost entirely on who decides to litigate what. So yes, of course, you're not allowed to ask. You are not allowed to ask about somebody's HIV status, for example. You are not allowed to ask if they've had the flu. But as you know, this is a world historical unprecedented national health emergency. And so the only reason why I think CNN is able to get away with this is that nobody has tried to litigate it yet.
Where are the litigators about this? I mean, I have been vaccinated. Judah, my dear friend here, has been vaccinated. I didn't like being vaccinated, but I was. You are too, Ben Boychuk.
Right. Correct.
And we all got sick.
Right. We all got sick. Where is the right to not have medical treatment, especially medical treatment of a kind which we know makes many people sick? Where is that right? Where does it say under the Constitution that the government can order people to get medical treatment and must ask them and can ask them about, and they do not have the Fifth Amendment right to not answer?
Well, we no longer have.
This actually gets to the question of these vaccine passports, right? Because as much as, Joe Biden has mused at length, and in fact this week, there's been a lot of people who have mused among the federal government saying, good God, we would love to require this. We would love to require every American citizen to get one of these, but they hem and haw, and they have to admit that they can't actually do it. But what the interesting thing is, like New York City is saying, if you want to go into a nightclub, or if you want to go to a bar or a restaurant or a Broadway theater, you need to be able to demonstrate that you got to show your vaccine card.
In Los Angeles, at certain places, it's the same thing.
Right. And so, and again, that gets back to the HIPAA thing.
It's a great question.
And so somebody who's listening to this, and we're smart folks too. I mean, the answer to that is, you might as well ask me if I have HIV. Go F yourself. You don't get to know that. It's none of your goddamn business. But if that has to be litigated, then we need to find lawyers who can litigate this.
Does Larry work on contingency?
That's all he does. You think I mean, God bless Larry Klayman, because the people, yes, he represents most people that can't afford legal services, and that's the point of Freedom Watch USA.org, is that he takes on these types of cases, and Ben Stein, he takes on the type of cases that the ACLU is meant for.
Well, the ACLU is an arm of the Democrat Party and has been for a long time.
No, you're extremely right. And we are treading in dangerous times. As you said, everybody should go out and read 1984 if they haven't already. But if you haven't read it, just open up your windows, listen, and start listening, because this is Welcome to 1984 Revisited. And if you just tuned in, you are listening to The World According to That Man, Benjamin Jeremy Stein. I want to thank everybody that's in the YouTube chat. I want to thank everybody I want to thank Rob for always coming on, Ben Boychuk for always coming on.
We love you, Rob. We love you, Ben.
And in 25 minutes, people, go to amgreatness.com. And that's amgreatness.com. That stands for American Greatness. And read Julie Kelly's piece. She's a true patriot, and she's going, I mean, what she's doing, I would say, is really very threatening for herself. So God bless people like Julie Kelly, because that is yeoman's work and dangerous work these days.
You bet.
And welcome back to The World According to Ben Stein. People want to talk about something very quickly. Not very quickly. I think it's very important, Ben, is this rent moratorium. And if Ben Boychuk could please read the story if people aren't familiar with this.
Well, I don't have it in front of me, but the gist, the gist of it is, I didn't know we were going to that right now. The gist of it is that the Centers for Disease Control, and again, we're talking a fair bit about like sort of fine constitutional points that people seem to have just kind of brushed off. But the Centers for Disease Control, at the behest of Joe Biden, has extended this eviction moratorium nationwide, essentially telling landlords, any landlord, that they are not allowed to evict anybody who has missed certain months of rent. But not only that, the order that the CDC imposed includes really draconian criminal penalties, hundreds of thousands of dollars in fines, and possible jail time if somebody is kicked out, even higher fines and the possibility of jail time if somebody is kicked out and dies.
What?
So, yeah. And so the question is, by what authority does the U.S. Centers for Disease Control, which has a mandate to control disease, but that's it, by what authority, even with an executive order from the ostensible president of the United States, how are they able to say you can't evict anybody? Where is the controlling legal authority?
I want Ben to answer that, but this goes to what Ben always shares. And I was talking with you about this, Ben Boychuk, is that this implied thing that people that own property are the big bad people in our country. That so many people, Ben Stein, invest in property like you, but some use it for rentals. You know, that is their retirement plan. They buy a building and they rent out, they rent out apartments in that building. And I believe the number, Ben, was 7% of them have been paid. I could be wrong on that number, but they're getting away with this, Ben, because how bad supposed landlords are.
Well, this is, again, a really, really more frightening story, I think, than you realize, Judah, because the basic building block of the free enterprise society and the free society is the ownership of property. Property is the bulwark against government totalitarian control. And if we take away one of the basic rights of ownership of property, namely the right to rent it out, and control the rental as we see fit within reason, then we are taking away a very major incident of the building blocks of capitalism and of freedom. And I understand, and really can understand, giving subsidies to people who have got COVID and who cannot afford to move because they have COVID and they're sick. That I do understand. But to just suddenly say to landlords that your property is not your property anymore, it's the government's property, it's up to the government to decide what to do with it, that is a very big whack at freedom.
Go ahead, Rob.
Well, so we've got a guy, he does a weekend show on our radio station, and his
93.1 WIBC.
Bam.
Yes, perhaps the king.
And his day job is he is a landlord. He owns buildings and he rents them out. And he's got one guy who refuses to pay his rent and hasn't paid it now probably in close to or over a year. And the number at this point is probably $12,000 that this guy is owed. And, you know, he's made the point. He said, look, the government didn't say I don't have to pay taxes on this place anymore. The government didn't say that I don't have to maintain a clean, healthy living environment anymore. The government didn't say that if the furnace goes out or they had an issue with the plumbing, I don't have to fix it. So this dude is you know, basically just freeloading off a guy who's now tens of thousands of dollars out, who's done nothing wrong. How does he pay? How does he provide for his family? How does he pay his bills? It's like the government doesn't give a damn at all about people who've done things the right way.
But Ben Boychuk's point is it's not even the government. It's the CDC.
Well, that is, I mean, it is partly the government. I love the point. I mean, you made a very good point, Ben, that I would just simply, you know, bring to a conclusion, which is that it is almost as if the government is nationalizing private property, but they're not saying it, right? I mean, they're you know, they're essentially saying to you, yes, of course you own these apartment buildings. Of course you own your commercial properties or whatever they are. But you just can't evict these people for the time being, but we're not nationalizing your property. You can do anything you want. You just can't do the thing that you need to do to actually make a profit on your investment. And by the way, just one little thing, and then I'll let it go. I've got a very good friend who's also a friend of the show who tunes in frequently, though I'm not sure he's watching tonight, who is a property manager for his parents. And this is essentially what we're talking about. The kind of people we're talking about are sort of are middle-class investors, people who bought properties 30 or 40 years ago, who made a very long-term investment, who have been regulated to death, and who are struggling to be able to maintain a business, you know, because of this. And it's unjust. It's not, we're not, and we're not talking about fabulously wealthy people. And the perverse upshot of it is, if some of these people, and some of them will go bankrupt, they're going to get bought out by these large holding companies. They're going to get bought out by BlackRock, that makes hundreds of millions of dollars a year just on rentals, and they're going to get bought out by those guys. And do we really want that to happen?
Well, I think, and I would like to again say, when this is in the Federalist Papers, and this is in the debates about the Constitution, and also debates about the Declaration of Independence, property is incredibly important. Now, the left says property is theft. That is a very basic axiom of extreme leftists and has been since the time of the French Revolution. But we say, no, property is a bulwark of freedom, and it is very scary the way the Biden administration has just ignored that.
Ben, what's it cost to rent a room at one of your joints?
I don't rent out rooms. What are you talking about?
You got to rent the whole place?
I don't rent out anything. I have a tiny amount of stock in a company that owns mini store warehouses.
Yeah, so that's actually
how much you got, Kendall. That's how much he rents.
Yeah, that. Rob is like the guy that calls you up on the phone, the telemarketer from a brokerage firm, and is asking you all these different questions to figure out your net worth. That's the slippery Rob Kendall. But Ben, I want to get something back, and I want to get so. Ben Boychuk brought up AIDS in the beginning. The great lie, and always the great lie, was that straight people were getting it, or it was the great lie. You can never figure out statistics because USA Today actually did a really interesting piece on this years ago. Whatever was okay at the time to say, hey, you got it, you got it. Now, the reason I bring this up is the narrative is being spewed out there that the unvaccinated are the Trump supporters. That's that is the
that all over the place.
That is the narrative, and it's the narrative you hear everywhere. It's the Trump report. Other than Rob, 3 out of 4 of us are vaccinated. But my point being, Ben, is I did a Google search on by race and vaccination. Now they aren't releasing it by state for some reason. It's very hard to find exact statistics on this, but as you could imagine, the highest people are white people to get it, and the lowest people are the Black community. And I can understand, but that their fear of getting needles and jabs in them and being tested. But it is the great lie, Ben.
And there are so many things that are going on now are the great lies, Judah. We're now a country that is run on the basis of one great lie after another. And I hate to say this, but go back to the beginning, spring of last year, when people were saying just a couple of weeks of flattening the curve and this thing will be over. And now it looks like we're going to be wearing masks for the rest of all eternity.
Oh, especially if Fauci, my God, as long as Fauci's alive, people will be wearing masks. But Ben Boychuk, I want to get back to that. Everything is anecdotal data. First of all, has any of
anecdotal data is a contradiction in terms.
But has anybody here ever met? I mean, when COVID was first coming out, we all knew, obviously through the year, we've known people that have died. We've known people that have gotten it. We've known people that have gotten seriously ill. As this new variant has come out, Ben Boychuk, have you met anybody that's caught the Delta variant? Have you met anybody? I mean, we keep on hearing about hospitalizations, not deaths.
Right. That's right. So not that I'm aware of, although I'm willing to hold out the possibility that I got it. Because I went to a concert on Sunday with almost 8,000 people, very few of whom were masked. And so I'll let you know in, I don't know, about
I hope
7 or 8 days.
I hope you don't have it. I pray God.
I hope so too. Well, but on the other hand, the other thing that I've said to friends, we'll find out if the vaccination works. Did you go to the Nazareth reunion? No. I went to the Pacific Amphitheater, Los Lobos, and the Blasters, and it was awesome.
You know what? Can I say I'm jealous and I'm happy for you that you went to a concert. Rob, you being in touch with a lot of callers, what are their opinions? Have they been? I'm just curious of data you could collect. Have they been vaccinated? Because I really do believe it's this lie. We all know what community has not been vaccinated in our country.
Well, I think most people have made look, here's what I always say to our audience. You make the choice based on what you believe is best for your personal health. I'm certainly not an anti-vaxxer. But if you make the choice, what gets me angry are these people who got the vaccine because they believe, we'll get these liberties. We'll get these freedoms back. We'll get a special this. We'll get a special that. It was never going to happen because it's not about that. And in many ways, the Democrats are wholly invested in shutting down society. So I think our audience, because they're very brilliant people, which is because we have people like Judah and Ben Stein on our station,
Ben Boychuk and you,
is that they're making the decisions that are best for their health, not doing it based on I think they're going to open society faster if more people have the vaccine.
And as Ben, you brought up, it was all to flatten the curve.
Curve. This is going to take a few weeks or a couple of weeks to do it, and then we'd be all free as birds. And now look at what's going on here.
Ben, you've been driving around LA County. Have you noticed the amount of people on the streets wearing masks? I mean,
You know what I noticed, which is almost unbelievable, is people in cars with the windows rolled up and the air conditioning blasting, wearing masks.
Yeah, I went to a drive-through last night, and I swear to God, I was on the phone with somebody when this happened. And I'm in line, and I am looking in the rearview mirror, Ben, and I see morbidly obese people which isn't crazy at a drive-through window. But after one of them ordered, they put their mask on. And I was thinking to myself, that's the least of your worries. No offense. It should be COVID, diabetes, heart disease, all of these different things. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I mean, literally, they were bigger than the car. I don't know how they fit it. It was like a little Toyota. Yeah.
I don't understand it. I don't understand it either. And I was down in San Diego on Wednesday, and I was waiting to meet somebody and standing on a street corner, and I saw people in BMWs, people in Audis, solo, with their windows up, with masks on.
Unbelievable.
Next to the University of California at San Diego, and I'm thinking to myself, these are all ostensibly smart people who ought to know better. Or do they think they're going to get it from their air conditioner? What? Why?
It's all window dressing, Ben. I brought this, Ben Stein. I brought this up.
Virtue signaling.
Virtue, right. And I brought this up the other day. We know that you can't get it from a cash register. We know you can't get it off shelves. We know you can't get it from products that you touch. We know that at this point. Yet every store still has hand sanitizer galore at the end of their counters. We know at this point it is not. You're not getting COVID by touching, your Goya bean can. And
what's a Goya bean?
Goya, it's a big company. They sell beans. It's a big Latin company, big Mexican food type company. Anyways, okay. But either way, Ben, my point being is it's all BS. You can't get it like that, and I don't see an ending in sight.
No, there's no end in sight because it's as we've all said, we're teaching the American people to love being controlled, if I shouldn't say love it, they don't love it. To accept it as the norm that you will be controlled. That is really, really frightening, really scary. I don't like it at all.
Somebody wrote in the chat, they said they'd literally seen people pull off their mask and smoke a cigarette. and that is actually, that is brilliantly said. And the last story that I've been, and I want to get to this because this is one of those, I swear this is true. Ben Boychuk, can you please read that story?
Wait a minute, which one are we?
About the Baylor professor.
Oh, this is the best one of the night.
And I swear this is true.
And I'm glad we saved it for last. So there's a Baylor University science professor who has published an article in a barely peer-reviewed journal, making the case that it is so dangerous for people like us to criticize the U.S. medical establishment, including Anthony Fauci, that the federal government should consider, among other remedies, extending federal hate crimes legislation.
I've heard about this. I've already heard about this. It's incredible. Yeah, incredible. It's incredible. It's incredible. It's incredible.
And people can argue whatever they want to argue, right? But where are we in this country, Ben Stein, where we find ourselves with people publishing in ostensibly peer-reviewed scientific publications who are so cavalier about dismissing the First Amendment?
With all due respect, sir, I spent a lot of time working with and against peer-reviewed publications when I was working on and publicizing the movie Expelled, questioning whether Darwinian evolution possibly made sense. And that peer-reviewed means nothing. It just means a group of buddies slapped each other on the back and said, "You're peer-reviewed now, pal. Go out and do some damage." Peer-reviewed means nothing. And where are we in this country? We are at the end of a long, wonderful trip in which we were the greatest country in the world and still are, and had freedoms that other people in the world just would have killed for. They're now risking their lives by the thousands every day to get here, get into this country, by boat, by foot, and every way they can. And yet There are people in the Congress, people in the universities, people in the media desperately trying to end this freedom that is the envy of the world. And why are they doing it? Because they are sick motherfuckers.
I'm gonna use that as a drop on my radio show and play it every day.
Brilliantly said. And by the way, Ben, you know, he might be. By the way, he's supposedly an expert in his field, but Baylor University is a pretty damn big university, and this is a guy, I hate to say it, that's teaching that, and we have a ton of examples of these types of professors, Ben Stein, that have the power for future generations, and it's
very, very scary. It's very scary. Look, it's scary what's happening right now. Go back to how we began this wonderful episode of this show. What's happening right now is a Nazi roundup of people trying to dissent and to express their freedom. If there had been murders, if there had been shootings, if there had been vandalism, if there had been violence, if there had been beatings, arson, I would understand. But no, the people who went into the Capitol January 6th shouldn't have done it. Absolutely shouldn't have done it. It's not a gigantic crime. The people who committed the crimes all summer long, murder, arson, theft, they are walking around scot-free.
Oh, you're exactly right. The last thing I wanted to talk about quickly, because it applies to all of us, Gavin Newsom is in some deep doo-doo about getting recalled. The Ben Boychuk, the numbers are pretty damning. And he blames it on conservatives. And he blames it on conservatives.
He blames it on conservatives and Republicans. Republicans in the state of California, by the way, 24% of registered voters. But
what?
Republicans in California are a rump party. It's not great, Ben. But here's the good news, possibly. So despite all of that, Gavin Newsom is up for a recall vote in about a month in California.
We get it in the mail.
You're going to get it in the mail because of COVID. And so who knows how it's going to go. I wrote a piece for American Greatness about a week ago about this. My feeling is that he could be recalled, but I'm not going to bet my house on it. What's interesting, though, is that there had been a recall effort against Newsom going on for well over a year. It was only after the COVID restrictions were really in place and he was caught at the French Laundry back in November without a mask.
I think you should explain what the French Laundry is.
So the French Laundry is this fantastic restaurant owned by Thomas Keller in Napa Valley.
Very expensive.
Very expensive. You're looking at, without wine, you're looking at $325 a head.
Wow.
And so it's a very famous place. And Newsom was there hobnobbing with lobbyists from the medical industry, ostensibly for a birthday party. At a time when restaurants were not allowed to have people seating indoors, they were not allowed to have people seating outdoors without masks on. All of the rules had been waived for him. And he was there with a high-powered group of people. He was caught on camera. He apologized for it. People left, right, and center understood that the guy was very much do as I say, not as I do. And so the fact is, the polls for him do not look wonderful, but he could still pull it out.
They have one poll, Ben, that is even, and they have one poll that he's down by 10%. Now, Ben Stein, the funniest comment he said was, the biggest threat of this is that it spreads across America.
That's very funny. It's very funny.
Look,
okay. Two things though. One,
please God,
see, Ben, you could have been governor of California.
I know.
And number two,
and think of what I could have done
with those hands. Think what you could have with those hands. And two, I don't know. Should we rush to judgment on Newsom because he at one point was married to Kimberly Guilfoyle?
Yes,
I will rush to judgment about him. Just the idea that he shut down religious worship without so much as a buy your leave, it makes him, to me, just less than dog food.
She holds the distinction of being his first BEAR. You could finish up the last letter so I don't get sued.
That and the fact that the man is constitutionally incapable of speaking in anything other than cliches. He is.
What do you mean bar?
BEAR.
He is awful, and I earnestly hope that he's recalled. I'm not, Larry Elder, who's a fantastic radio talk show host.
Great. He's great.
The sage from South Central.
He's really good. He's really good. He's really good.
And he's the one Republican apparently who may have a chance.
I'm glad you brought him up. I'm going to send him some money over the internet tonight. God bless you.
No, he is. Larry Elder has been taking abuse.
He's great.
For absolute,
he's great.
For many years. Like I suggested, I think if I were him, I would make Leo Tyrell my lieutenant governor or whatever. I know I would literally the Leo and Larry ticket or Larry and Leo ticket. Yeah, Rob.
Stein for lieutenant governor. I'm calling it right now.
Okay, and before I forget, because a friend of mine sent me the other day a Reagan quote, one of the famous ones. What was the line that you came up with for Reagan in the 80s, in the 1980?
The main one was, "Are you better off now than you were 4 years ago?"
That's insane that you came up with. The main one. That's one of the most famous ones.
I know, and he came up. I told you one of his men came up to me after the event. I think it was at Bel Air Republican Women's Club, and asked me if I wanted to be a speechwriter for him. And I said, "Oh, no. I'm already committed to Mr. Bush because my parents have been friends with the Bushes forever." But I obviously made a mistake there.
No. I mean, you don't end up in Ferris Bueller.
Yeah, exactly.
So it would have been obviously extremely cool to be Reagan's speechwriter, but
Ferris is better.
Ferris is Ferris is a little better. And on that note, I want to thank everybody that's been listening tonight. I want to thank everybody that's going to be listening to the podcast. It means a lot to us. It really does. And remember to sign up for Ben's email, benstein.substack.com. But you could also find Ben Boychuk, who is the managing editor of amgreatness.com. The piece should be up by now if you said 30 minutes ago. So it's American Greatness. Please go there, read the stuff, support Julie Kelly, support American Greatness, also support spectator.org, who Ben writes for. But you could also, and have Julie Kelly go on Mock and Rob show. I think it would be perfect, perfect symmetry. You could hear Rob Kendall streaming every day, 9 to noon.
I want to be on again. I love that square, that circle in downtown Indianapolis with the statue that represented various important events in the Civil War. And right near it, on that circle, there was an ice cream place that had some of the best chocolate milkshakes I've ever had. I don't know if it's still there.
The chocolate shop, it's still there. And I'm excited to rent a room from future Lieutenant Governor of California, Ben Stein.
And Ben, you should write a book of famous places you've been, but the reason you remember them is because of the food that you ate there.
I should, but I'm busily working on my.
No,
book.
After the Nixon book, I think that would be just really a fun read. You remember the place in Indianapolis because they have the best malted shakes.
Not malted, just chocolate.
Chocolate shakes. Rob, everybody could hear you from 9 to noon, 93.1. Bam! WIBC, Rob Kendall is the president of Conservative Talk Radio. We will see you Saturday night. Remember, AM Greatness, spectator.org, 93.1 WIBC. Ben Stein, please take us out.
Go down, Moses, go way down in Egypt land. Tell old Pharaoh, let my people go. When Israel was in Egypt land, let my people go. Oppressed so hard they could not stand, let my people go. Go down, Moses, way down in Egypt land. Tell old Pharaoh, let my people go.
I got to tell you something. I never like to say something after the song, but that's the most brilliant song for what we're going through right now, Ben Stein.
That's why I said it.
It's absolutely brilliant and spot on. And we are enslaved, and we got to be let go.
Well, we're not going to be. We're not enslaved. We're going to about to have some incredibly delicious French toast that I will make with these hands.
Giddy up,
for my
enjoy.
For my wife, who's a saint.